How's that for a little view? Get my toque wrapped around the audio device, so hope you don't hear the raindrops hitting and making too much of a racket. I'm going to show you what I'm looking at. There's the camera with its hat on. And here I am. It's funny, I remember I used to sit up on this side of the valley, we'd look over in that slide right there. And usually there's a little more or less snow, the bears would really go and hit that spot where there's the pyramid of snow at the bottom. It started greening up there earlier. And usually you get a chance of seeing a big bear there in the springtime. But anyway, I love walking around these riverbeds sometimes because the tracks tell you everything, right? Nothing can hide the tracks. Well, without a big effort. So far it's just been a couple old deer tracks, moose tracks. There's wolf track right there, actually. Old wolf track. Here, I'll videotape that and show you too. Old, it's like imprinted into the moss. Cool, eh? Who knows how old that wolf track is? I'll see a heavy one. Everything hunts in the valley bottoms, especially this time of year. There's lots of dead stuff in the spring down here. Sometimes there's fish carcasses left over. And the moose are always down here in the bottom, feeding on eating the ends of these willow bushes. They don't need much. You get a big willow patch, that's where you're going to find the moose and the grizzlies and the wolves, they know it. And the black bears even. And black bears will take down a full-grown moose too. We've seen it happen up north. But anyway, it's a great spot to sit for a bit and get some voices heard. Let's see what we got. Hi Steve, I have 2 encounters to relate, neither of which is really dramatic, but just aligned with a lot of other encounters. Story 1. We were coon hunting one night, way deep in the little river bottoms between Idabel and Broken Bow in far southeast Oklahoma in the 1970s. It's a typical southern river flowing, usually sluggish sometimes, between high clay banks, sometimes across gravel bars, though some very extensive hardwood bottoms. Late on this bright moonlit night, we had been sitting for a spell right above the river on the north bank, just being really quiet so we could hear the dogs and mark their direction of travel so we could eventually intercept them. We all saw an upright bipedal figure walk out on a gravel bar just upstream from us about 200 yards. It knelt down on one knee and scooped water with its palms up to its mouth to drink, and then faded back into the riverside shadows. We were 10 miles from a paved road and only sign of human housing. We were 10 miles from any paved road and any sign of human housing. There were no campgrounds in those bottoms, and we knew there were no other hunters in the woods that night. We couldn't make out any features except that it seemed large for a man. It spooked us a little bit, but we figured it must have been a man, although none of us believed that. The interesting thing was the way it drank, like a human would, and not like an animal would by getting down on all fours and sticking its face in the water. Seems like there is some lore stuck in my head, maybe from the Bible, Torah, or Quran, that says the way to tell a beast, bracket demon, from a non-beast or a righteous man is in how it drinks. Supposedly an animal drinks directly from the water source, and a true man drinks with a cup or with his hands. Story 2. Mid-80s. Late evening on a deer stand, mule deer in southwest Colorado. I was on the side of a finger ridge, and my buddy was downridge toward the point of the ridge, about 300 yards downhill and west of me. I heard a deer coming full tilt left to right, just down the slope below me, heading toward where my buddy was planted. Something had spooked it bad because it was hauling ass. I got a glimpse of it only. Then, right after it passed, I heard a loud bipedal footfalls running on a massive scale and moving fast right behind that deer by about 50 yards. It was dense aspen and thick young spruce, and I could just make out a large dark form moving fast and making a great racket, tearing through the brush and trees. After I calmed down, I went to my buddy's position, and he told me he saw the same thing. We quietly left the area and came back the next day in broad daylight. We found a track through the brush and trees where it looked like he took a giant weed eater and took a swath about 6 feet off the ground and thrashed and broke off or bent over a lot of the trees. We found one spot where the deer and the pursuer had jumped down about a 4-foot ledge of rock onto a rock shelf. We could plainly see the deer's tracks where it had skidded a little, and also we could see what looked like there were 2 large human-like feet had landed and left some scuffs in the fine gravel and the sand that coated the rock shelf. This is near Gunnison. I wish we would have tracked further, but I bet we would have found evidence of other Sasquatch and a fresh deer kill. And that's where it ended, unless I didn't copy it all. Well, that's interesting. Thanks for sending that in, buddy. And, you're not alone. You're not the only one to witness something like that. It's funny, I remember, it reminds me one time I was steelhead fishing on the Gagetown River in Vancouver Island years ago, early spring, and 2 of us were standing there in a gravel bar fishing with thick, dense timber behind us. I'll never forget it because it was so weird, but this doe come flying out of the timber and joined us on the same gravel bar, panting like she had been running for her life, and she did not give a shit about us. She just kept standing there in the gravel bar looking back in the timber, panting. And I remember thinking, oh shit, what's she just brought to us, right? But nothing materialized, and I never heard a thing. But she was absolutely out of breath and panting. And it's almost like she knew there was some sort of security standing there with us on the gravel bar. She's probably 10 yards from us, I think. And then after about 15 minutes or so, she just slowly walked away and walked back to the timber. Pretty bizarre. Hey Steve, please feel free to use my name, Danny Bourdreau. First off, I'd like to thank you for coming forward to the encounters in honor of your grandfather and by commemorating his service during World War II. As a former member of the Canadian Armed Forces, I want to thank you for sharing his character and his heroism during this dark time of our history. I also want to thank you for having the fortitude to stand up for everyone that has either been ridiculed, harassed, or discredited because they decided to open up and share their experience with someone that turns out to be a closed-minded individual. All too often, sharing experiences ends up in causing us unwanted emotional turmoil instead of being intelligently discussed or supported by a trusted friend or family member. This often ends up pushing us into a state of anger and feelings of betrayal. I'm a 55-year-old male from Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada, and during the 90s, I was an active archer and bow hunter pursuing the white-tailed deer and black bear whenever I had the opportunity to get out. During this period, I was in my 20s, and I experienced a few incidents that can only say opened my mind to the possibility of something odd happening in our region. My first strange encounter was during a spring bear season with a friend and co-worker in the Indian Mountain area of Highway 126 near Moncton. We were hunting one late afternoon, and I was in a portable tree stand a few meters away from the shooter position as the cameraman, hoping to record a successful hunt for my friend. About an hour or so after getting situated, we started hearing what sounded like a huge animal crashing through the woods like a freight train heading towards our position. As this was occurring, I tried turning on the camera to hopefully record what I presumed could be a moose approaching us based on the amount of noise it made by plowing through the brush, and the camera I was using would not turn on as if batteries were dead. Whatever approached us came within 30 meters from our location, as I could hear it breathing heavily once it stopped moving. I could not see anything as much as I tried to catch any movement from my stand position. It only stayed in place for less than a minute and then walked away, and I still could not see any movement from my position, 10 feet up in a tree, as it left the area. We discussed our experience once, left the area after dusk, and my friend was not able to see anything either from his position. It seemed a little odd that we were not being able to catch a glimpse of whatever approached us on that afternoon hunt. Something that stood out to me afterwards was that this stand location was abandoned by another bow hunter that we knew well. This individual mentioned to me that he had encountered the biggest black bear that he'd ever seen in the area, and it scared him away from hunting in this location, and that struck me as odd. Normally this would be something exciting for any hunter to be able to harvest a large trophy animal, and whatever he witnessed in this location did not encourage him to pursue the bear and pushed him out of this area out of obvious fear. Another experience that really shook my paradigm was during bow season for white-tailed deer with a different friend in '94. We found small footprints while bow hunting, and I eventually sent my encounter to the BFRO, as they seemed to be the only organization at the time that was documenting reports, as the internet was still in its infancy. Note, I was never contacted or interviewed by anyone from this organization. Concerning. This happened in October '94 during the bow season in New Brunswick, approximately 20 miles outside the city of Moncton, off the old Fredericton Road near the Black's General Store/Restaurant. Black's General Store/Restaurant. This area was a popular area during a rifle season with a lot of camps and logging roads that branched off. This particular logging road we were on was number 174. We had been scouting the area for the last couple of weeks for deer sign and found a good spot on this road. We had parked a vehicle approximately 3/4 a mile away from our ground blinds and walking to the area and casually scanning the ground for deer sign, and noticed a set of footprints in the mud that seemed to belong to a child or a small-footed adult approximately size 5. We both stopped to look and wondered why a child or woman would be walking in mud barefoot way out here. The footprints seemed to have gone clear across the road from a previously clear-cut area into heavy brush and weren't following the road, and we could not come up with a logical explanation to how these prints came to be in this remote location, as there is no vehicle tracks or ATV tracks on the road indicating recent travel. We speculated a little more, and jokingly I mentioned Bigfoot. We proceeded to our blinds and not go back to camp to get a camera, as I suggested to document these prints. I regret not going back for my camera, as dermal ridges were clearly visible in the prints found. I eventually shared my footprint encounter with friends and family, and was unfortunately met with ridicule, and it turned me inside out with regret and anger. The burden of trying to convince these non-believers made me feel as if I was lying crazy. In my frustration, I contacted a friend that was a reporter in the local newspaper called the Moncton Times and Transcript, and he arranged to have someone meet me so I could relay my footprint findings in hopes of finding answers to the mystery at this point had consumed me. Shortly after my interview there was an article that appeared in this publication on the February 16th, 1998, in a popular column called The Answer Man. An anonymous person identified as Shaky in Salisbury had written to the editor of his popular column, asked if there were any reported sightings of Bigfoot in New Brunswick, and indicated they had witnessed a large upright creature fleeing into the woods near Petitcodiac during the deer hunting season of the previous year, '97. The editor responded with an overview of 4 encounters that he was able to locate on the BFRO website that included my story and 3 others that were available at the time. See attached picture of newspaper article. I've since restrained myself from openly discussing the subject unless someone else brings it up, and even then I'm pretty selective about telling my story, as trust has been lost by past events. I've been following the subject on and off for years. I've since discovered these encounters happen regularly on the east coast of North America, but are met with ridicule, and the topic of Sasquatch Bigfoot is not a normal topic of discussion, as it is on the west coast, and encounters mostly go unreported for this reason. A story that you recently featured on your channel piqued my interest. The story you shared from the nuclear physicist Edgar, and how he experienced these beings regularly at different nuclear locations across Canada, and named a location in New Brunswick as one of these areas. There's been other reported encounters from U.S. military soldiers that spent time at CFB Gagetown in joint exercises that reported witnessing a large bipedal creature crashing through the woods. This is witnessed by American and Canadian soldiers. Another encounter involving U.S. soldiers at the time at the same base during another joint exercise happened while they were on guard duty at night at a munitions area where I witnessed a UFO stopping over their position, and it was reported their commanding officer never discussed afterwards. I know that you recently visited New Brunswick during the holidays, and curious to know if any encounters were disclosed to you from the locals, or was the subject even discussed during your stay. I've heard that nuclear power is known to manifest portals. I'm wondering if this could explain why Edgar eyewitnessed these beings getting past several levels of security but never leaving the area. Are they able to detect these portals, and once located enter them to get to another dimension? Unfortunately, we have more questions than answers in these topics, and hope we may eventually get a glimpse of the truth that will help us understand who we are, and maybe how we came to be, and where we are going. Thanks for sharing my story. Looking forward to your next book. All right, man. Thanks a lot for that email, Danny. It's funny you mentioned Edgar, because I was going to mention the same thing. When I went back east, Sarah's stepmother, she spoke matter-of-factly on this topic because her father was in the armed forces, and when they were in Chilliwack, British Columbia, that's all he ever talked about. And I think he's seen them, and he knew a bunch of other people had seen them too. And there's absolutely no shortage of military personnel who know all about these things and seen them numerous times. So, but as far as people ridiculing, you guys, if I could, look what I'm doing, you guys. Everybody listen, look what I'm doing, all right? I'm making sure that there is, 2 or 3 or 4 emails from people around the world shared on this channel every single day, right? Every single day. That's a lot of people, man. That's a lot of people. And you just gotta, like I said before, which has pissed off a handful of people, I used to say it on a hunting forum, is when you see one of these things, the majority of the human population today becomes instantly very dumb. Right? Because once you see one of these things firsthand, and then you know the honest to God truth, and you know that everybody's smart as a pickle because their brains can't wrap around it, refuse to wrap around it, but meanwhile you've seen the thing right there, or the footprints or whatever. You know it's real. And that's what happened to me. That's my reaction to it. It's like, as soon as I figure this out, it's like, holy shit, are we ever dumb as a frickin' pack of nails on average as a society, right? We're misled, we're lied to, we're not taught the truth, and we are used to bring the honey back to the hive. That's all we're used for, is making the honey, right? Giving over 50% of our earnings to these shitballs politicians. Are you kidding me? Some serious landslide going on over there. I don't think the audio would have picked that up though. The people, man. And just, if somebody wants to laugh at it, they don't believe whatever, they can't accept it, just move along. It doesn't matter. They obviously don't. They're probably not going to benefit on any way of being informed unless they have the unfortunate moment of bumping into one themselves. So it just doesn't matter. And just remember, there isn't a human being big enough to make myself or any of you change your story or hide. All right? You got to put that thought in your head and keep it there. There's no human being big enough to shame you into lying about the truth. Okay? Just don't let them do it. It's too easy. I don't. Follow my lead. What else do we got? It's endless. Answer to one of Steve's questions. All right, hopefully it's a good one. Happy Easter, Steve. This is Pamela McCullough. Happy Easter, Steve. Thank you for sharing. I have much to share. However, in the interest of time, I'm going to answer one of your questions, Steve, and later share more. You asked, why would children and animals have an awareness of Sasquatch when adults may not? It has to do with vibrations, electromagnetic waves, and frequency. Young children's brain waves are on a different frequency than an adult brain. It's more like the frequency adults' brains going into during sleep. Animals are also on a different frequency. Think about how elephants or whales communicate over long distances, yet a person isn't aware of the transmission. Or think of bats communicating on a frequency we don't pick up. Our brain wave change with age. Often we trust our dog or cat's response to an unseen source, yet dismiss a young child's response. Many should rethink that. As a 5-year-old, I saw a being and tried to get an adult to come and see. I was laughed at and told I was making it up. That was close to 60 years ago. I know what I saw. There have been many unnatural happenings in my life of a wide range, but today I'm just answering one of your questions. Thanks again, Steve. No signature. All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I absolutely agree. Just through myself observing life and observing people and watching, I came to that conclusion a long time ago, that children are born with our natural instincts and our power, whatever you want to call it, until it gets erased out of them. And I think it's intentionally with the sham public education system. It's just my feelings. You don't jump on my bandwagon ever. You have to look into everything yourself and come up with your own conclusions on your own, right? But that's what I have absolutely convinced myself of that many years ago. And it's going to take quite a bit to change my stance on that too. But thanks again for sharing that email with everybody. Hey Steve, if you don't want to share this entire email, scroll to the part labeled story in capitals. But if you share it all, thanks, I'll keep it quick. Hopefully this helps people form a better understanding of this topic and allows them to speak about it in clearer terms to others if they choose to. So part of why I believe so many people, just like myself, had a hard time believing the existence of these creatures is due to how the media and other things portray them. They create a belief of a singular being, the Bigfoot. Oh, you seen Bigfoot? Bigfoot was in my backyard, etc. Even the title Finding Bigfoot creates this idea of a single creature. Imagine a show called Finding the Silverback, back before they were discovered. It would sound ridiculous, but if it was searching for the species of silverbacks, it makes more sense. They've created a myth about a lone creature that is seen all over the world, which obviously would be impossible, and I too shun the idea of a single creature being capable of being seen in BC, then the next month in Florida. It's once this topic is approached as a view of it being a species, and sightings all over the world showing that it's a very diverse species, or possibly that there are many types of this species that makes sense. Hope I've kind of made sense of that story. So this takes place before I started researching Sasquatch and became a total believer. And until then, I thought maybe it was aliens or something. LOL. I just had no explanation. So I'm from PEI, Canada. Hope you like your potatoes. I've grown up outside and live on a farm, so being outside the main part of my life. I camped outside probably more than some people have, even stepped in a forest. I've camped outside probably more than some people have even stepped in a forest, but being in the woods has never even bothered me. We also don't have any big predators here, other than the coyotes, and I think the last bear was spotted back in the 1800s. But I do believe we have lynx, maybe, or some type of cat in the western part of the island, if I'm correct. So me and my buddy built a little cabin, which wasn't finished at this time, but had 3 walls complete. One wall half done and the roof half done. Picture a closed box with half the top missing and the top half of one wall missing. That's how it looked. It also had a door on it. Stayed there many times, no problems. But one night we were sleeping in our hammocks in the cabin, which when closed is like a cocoon, so you can't see out of them. I woke up in the night and was terrified. I know something was either in the cabin or outside the open side of it looking in. I just had a feeling, and I know it wasn't sleep paralysis or a bad dream because I was awake a while contemplating to scream and call my friend awake or look out the hammock, but never did. Fought myself till I went back to sleep. So the next day I bring this up to my friend. He says the same thing happened with him, except at one point he felt as if someone or something poked him through the hammock a couple times. Also, when I was awake, I listened for a long time and didn't hear any sounds of any critters or anything. So there wasn't a raccoon or coyote or something. I'd say whatever it was probably heard me wake up, as my breathing would have changed, and it probably froze just as much as I did. But the feeling I felt that night, I've never had it before, and I've never had it again. And it was only years later, after reading about Sasquatch, that I thought perhaps it was possibly an experience with one. We don't have massive forests here, but lots of decent-sized plots of forest, which are a lot connected to that. If me and my friends want to live in the woods unnoticed, it wouldn't be a problem. The same friend who does a lot of trapping and is outdoors a lot also heard one night really loud sounds, as he called it, deep like a cow, he said, but he knew it wasn't a cow, and where he was, there wasn't any farms with cattle close enough to produce the sound of what he heard. Weird stuff goes on, even in a tiny little island with forest that would be dwarfed by some of the regions these stories come from. But it just shows how incredible nature is, and possibly just how elusive these creatures are. Love the videos, man. Absolutely love the truth coming from you. I want nothing but truth in my life and give nothing but to it, and I hope everyone can find the truth they're looking for. All right, Colton, appreciate it, man. Thanks for sending that in. PEI wasn't there, but I can see PEI from the other end of that bridge, New Brunswick. Oh, camera's getting wet. You know, it's funny with people thinking things are far out, too incredible to understand or believe or take in. Well, let's look at it from this angle. So the year is 2021. The world governments are slowly feeding the mainstream population tidbits that, yes, there are unidentified flying objects visiting the Earth today. They've all flat out admitted it. It's 2021. The cat's out of the bag. Now, if you're one of the few miserable people that are here in this channel following just to laugh and sneer and make jokes about it, and you insist on not taking this as fact, well, how can the governments of the world, the major superpowers in the world, admit publicly there are crafts visiting the planet not from the planet? Okay? And let me replay that again. Just the fact that there are crafts in the sky visiting this planet that aren't from the planet equals anything is possible. That confirms it. That should confirm it to 100% of the population. Anything's possible. If there's a craft coming to this planet, which they fully admitted publicly, anything could be disembarking off of one of those crafts and hitting the dirt on the face of the planet at any time, at any place, at any given time, anywhere. Show me I'm wrong. So, for mainstream news outlets, governments, military to admit to the world today there are crafts visiting the planet, and at that same time there's human beings in this population that hear that, shoots right past their head, and they go to, there ain't no Bigfoots, that's impossible. Really? Really? It's pretty incredible, isn't it? Human beings are quite the species. We are quite the species. It's just a real sad thing to observe when you are fairly aware and you are watching the majority of the population being systematically driven into the ground when it comes to common sense and real true knowledge and facts and honesty. It's a real sad thing to be a part of. It's a sad, frustrating thing to watch. And especially when you have a zero tolerance for bullshit and bullies and misleading pricks, because you just want to go get them and kick their ass and get everybody back on the right, healthy, good track again, so that we all have equal, fair chance at living our lives to the absolute maximum, and all of us enjoying all of the true, honest knowledge available to each and every one of us equally across the board. Why is it that happening? Why are we kept so stupid? I don't get it. We're all being used as a bunch of frickin' slaves on a slave planet, bringing home the honey to the entity, right? It's all about the entity. Making the honey and bringing it back, and go out and breaking our backs and bringing the honey back again. It's not fair, is it? It's just not fair. It's not fair, is it? It's not fair. It's going to take a whole bunch of people to get pissed off, speak openly, and fight back, and quit giving all these dark pricks your power. Quit doing it, all right? It's time to band together, give every single human being in the face of the planet equal opportunity to be heard, equal opportunity to speak, equal opportunity to be educated, and have all the world's knowledge shared with each other equally. All right? Show me I'm wrong.